Us. We're here on the 22nd of November. This is notable in two ways, perhaps. All right, perhaps not. You've got me on that one. But the things I was thinking of is tomorrow's a holiday in North America, meaning the United States, not really Canada, called Thanksgiving. And a lot of people's families are getting together. A lot of people are turning their attention to the plights of less fortunate people and to gratitude for the people and things and events of their life. And I invite you to take a moment and do the same, whether your relations are with us or not, whether you're near or far. Please take a moment and turn your hearts and your gratitude and your minds to all that we do have, all that we get to be and do in this amazing world. And thank you, of course, my dear listeners, for joining us each and every week to find out more about coaching and the people that are defining, supporting, and sometimes disrupting our industry. But I don't take it for granted, and I don't take your listenership for granted. I know that you're busy and got a lot to do, and I want to thank you very much for being here. As you may recall, we've got a shout-out to do each segment of this program. The first is to the International Coach Federation. I am delighted, proud, honored, and completely aligned with our media partnership with the International Coach Federation. We're now in our fourth year of being a media partner of the International Coach Federation. It gives us an opportunity to support the fine folks of the association. Also known as the ICF, the International Coach Federation is the leading global organization dedicated to advancing the coaching profession. And they do that by setting high standards, providing independent certification and credentials for coaches, providing ongoing education and continuing education for coaches, and building a worldwide network of trained coaching professionals. Last week, we were delighted to have the Director of Education and Research from the International Coach Federation with us, and they're also the largest storehouse in the world of information, research, and learnings in coaching. So if you got nothing else to do, or when you have a moment, go to coachfederation.org. And yes, check out the events, check out the things and benefits they have for members, but also check out that research incredible archive. It is the world's largest organization of professionally trained coaches, and you can find coach training and accredited coach training programs available on their website. In addition, your ICF membership and credential elicit instant credibility in the world for members, for you, for those organizations that are looking for coaches and want to ensure quality. The ICF is committed to connecting professional coaches with the tools and resources they need to succeed in their careers. To learn more about the ICF, to find out what they're up to stay up to date, go to coachfederation.org or follow them on Twitter at that's right, I said at ICFHQ. ICF on Twitter is at ICFHQ. There's also an ICF representative on this here program each quarter, and as I said, if you haven't listened to it already, go back to the archive and listen to Mark Rich and the Director of Research and Education and the incredible studies that they're doing, along with PricewaterhouseCoopers, so you know it's legit and expensive. What else do I want to let you know? Well, that's it for the shout-outs. We will continue our shows through the end of this year, and then we've got another entire year of extraordinary shows lined up for you. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast, and you can do that either by going to our website, thecoachingshow.com, because I'm a genius at naming stuff, or by any, iTunes or any place fine podcasts are available. But we'd love to hear you each and every week. And if you like, just come and listen live here at WSRadio.com, which is the worldwide leader in Internet talk. All right, let's just get to it. I don't have a guest co-host today. Everybody's too busy buying and stuffing their turkey. That was not a euphemism. And it's just me and a couple of genius people here and you. So our first guest is a visionary human resources and business innovation strategist. He's got successes across for-profit, not-for-profit, and public sector organizations. Currently the Chief Human Resources Officer for the Henry M. Jackson Foundation in Bethesda, Maryland. Previously, he was the Chief Human Resources Officer at AARP. He's also held roles as Director for HR Strategy at both the Library of Congress and the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, and as the Chief Human Capital Officer at the Federal Election Commission. We're delighted to welcome to our microphones for the first time author, visionary, and human resources leader, John Sigmon. Hello, sir.
Well, hello, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here with you.
Thanks for being had, as we like to say. John, look around outside. Where do you find yourself today? Where are you?
Well, I am actually in Bethesda, Maryland, looking out over a beautiful green lawn on a nice sunny autumn day with a nice pond and some beautiful birch trees surrounding it. It's just a glorious day, and I'm really thankful that you helped me kind of get reconnected with the gratitude that I should probably be connected to all the time, but thank you for that.
You and me both, brother. Thank you. Hey,
Exactly.
I know that you want to talk about your journey a bit, and I'm happy to do that in a while. But I think that if most of our listeners had the opportunity for a thought leader in human resources, what we would want to know is a couple of things. You know, on a selfish level, I think a lot of coaches would like more organizations and more HR departments to know about them so that they could be hired or work inside of organizations. In terms of what you know from your broad experience in HR, is there a secret path? Is there a secret meeting of HR professionals where you pass around the names of coaches? Or what's a great approach for a coach who would like to work with a specific organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would recommend sort of, I don't mean this in the way that it sounds, sort of trolling around through the Society for Human Resources Management. I think that that's a great opportunity. Other associations also utilize sort of a catalog, if you will, of coaches. So, for example, I am a fellow in the American College of Healthcare Executives, and so if you have some, coaching aspirations for people in healthcare executive roles, you should probably check them out. They have a little vetting process that they go through, but they have a resource directory for coaches for their members. And so I would start there, and then just get to know people who are in the HR profession. And probably the easiest way to do that is become a member of the Society for Human Resources Management. It's not overly expensive. I think it's $150 or so a year, and that kind of clues you into a little bit about what's going on. They have conferences, other sorts of things. It might be a great opportunity for people to kind of band together and maybe get a booth at a conference, something like that. But I think that's a point well taken, and that is that the HR space seems to be quite a black box for a lot of people.
Indeed, and then because of the clamor, the baying howls of the hungry coaches outside the walls, sometimes I think HR professionals sort of insulate themselves from contact with coaches that they may not know or have vetted. Is there some, besides sort of going where the HR professionals are, is there a way into an organization that's not through HR, or is that always the best portal?
No, that's not always the best portal, unfortunately. So I'll just kind of speak frankly about that. I think a lot of times the best portal is, like a lot of things in this world, through personal relationships. And so so here's my challenge. If you know someone who has recently gotten a promotion at their work or what have you, that's a perfect opportunity to find out, will their organization sponsor you to have an executive coach or a coach to help, because the statistics are fairly alarming with people who move from one level of an organization to another level in terms of quote-unquote failure rate. Mm-hmm. So your ability to be successful and to leverage all of the things that you did in your previous role in your new role, it really is extraordinarily helpful to have a coach. And so I think if you, in your comings and goings, your cocktail parties or what have you, if you run across somebody who's recently gotten a promotion, that's really a perfect entree, I think, to kind of get yourself into that organization. Unfortunately, I don't think always that HR is the best route to do that.
Thanks for that clarity and the candor. And I heard inside there a call for something that's very near and dear to my heart. People, we need to be having more cocktail parties. That's what I want to say. we just, there's not enough milling around and mixing and, intermingling with cocktails. So let's do that.
Well, I think to just to that point real quick, I think that on the East Coast, we don't have enough dinner parties out here.
That's fair enough.
Like on the West Coast, lots of dinner parties you can go to and mingle with folks. Here, we just don't have that.
True. And while we're at it, let's have people raise the level of bourbon that they serve at their cocktail parties. All
Perfect.
Right. Now that we've gotten the important stuff out of the way, you are the author of The Empowered CHRO, and you have a lot to say about leadership in human resources. I want to give you a sort of a bully pulpit for a moment to say what you think, if there are HR professionals or aspiring HR professionals listening today, what do you want them to know or think about? What's the important topic in HR leadership?
Yeah, so that's a great. Thank you for that entree. Here's what I would suggest to anyone who is in HR or aspiring to be in HR: is the HR does not exist for its own sake. We exist to promote and advance the people in our organization, and to advance and promote our organizations through people. And I think that sort of the traditional sort of way of thinking about HR is perhaps not necessarily misplaced, but a little limited. And so if we think about work and what the world of work looks like, the scientists tell us that right now the first person to live to be 150 years old has already been born.
Wow.
Now, if you sort of take that at face value, what does that mean for work? Well, that means that people will be their careers will be much longer. Thankfully, I'm not going to have to engage in that too much. But so people will work, 80 or 90 years of their life. And so what does that mean for the work environment and how we transition people, how we utilize people, the traditional ways that we use to sort of hire, promote people, place them in various roles? And so if you're an HR professional, broadening your perspective outside of HR to think about the external environment and about the work, I think is really important from a macro level. So from a tactical sort of level, the thing that I have noticed over and over and over again in all of my travels is that leadership, as a general rule, this is a big blanket statement, is a little lacking. And oftentimes it's really not the leader's fault necessarily. I think we've not done a great job of helping to prepare people for leadership roles, and I mean leadership at all levels. So someone is a deep subject matter expert, let's say in accounting, and there's a vacancy for a manager role, and certainly whoever's this deep subject matter expert, the organizational thinking is they should probably be able to be a great leader of accountants. And of course, that's where the key point of failure really occurs. So leadership, and taking a macro view. That's really my message to HR professionals. And it's something I tell myself every day.
Man, I love that first piece that you said too, because like you, certainly at a much less storied level, have a background in healthcare as an executive, and man, HR does not exist for its own self. There are about 400 people I know need to hear that who are in HR right now that I used to work with. So, thank you for that.
Yeah,
but also thanks for the call for leadership. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and I've actually been one of those people, so I can speak with some authority on that.
Nice. Well, this seems to give us a good entree, I think, to the topic of you going from coaching skeptic and really sort of an anti-coaching point of view to one where you yourself are a credentialed coach or a certified coach through Marshall Goldsmith and the International Coach Federation. That's quite a journey from no coaching to I'm a coach. What did you see? Was it related to this leadership point?
It actually was to some extent. So, as you mentioned earlier, over the years, I've held a variety of roles, really across a number of industries and professions, and it wasn't terribly long ago. I'm not going to say how long ago because it's a little embarrassing, but I had a very specific conversation at a staff meeting. So we were in a staff meeting with myself and my peers and our boss, and one of my colleagues brought to the table this idea that we should have a cadre of coaches available for managers and leaders in our organization to tap into. And the idea would be that we would vet coaches, we would have kind of a quote-unquote stable of coaches available, and if there was a need, and people had the desire, we would make that service available to our leaders and managers. And I recall that discussion very vividly, and my reaction was pretty negative, actually. So my point was, why aren't we having managers take on the role of coaching their employees. So that was my perspective at the time, which you can hear today as a very narrow perspective. But what that did, that whole commentary really just stifled it. It killed the entire conversation, because what occurred as a result of that was our boss, who was at the table with us, basically said he agreed, and that closed the conversation. So that was one period of time. But a few years later, what happened with me is my work began to yield a lot of results. And as a result of that, I was offered a couple of promotions in pretty rapid succession. And as I look back on that journey, that was really the beginning of sort of a seismic shift for me in my thinking and actually my being sort of around coaching. And in short, what happened was, as I got promoted into these various roles and eventually into a head of HR role, what I found was that there was no one to give me the kind of information I needed to be successful. So people tended to sort of tiptoe around issues, and I tended to not get the full flavor of things. And then the other piece that I found was that I really didn't have anyone to turn to. Right? There was no one that I could bounce. I did, so there was all of that. And at the same time, I was working on a project with someone. His name is Ian, who was a coach and also a consultant. And it's just sort of the stars kind of aligned with that. And so I got to talking to Ian a little bit, and then I kind of realized the value of what a good and experienced coach could bring. So I hired him to be my coach and to help me through this transition period in being a kind of a newly appointed leader of a very large organization, lots of responsibility. And he did a couple of things for me. One was he held a mirror up to me, which is something that I wasn't getting clearly from my staff or even from my peers at the time, and also reassured me from time to time that, I'm not crazy. And so he was somebody who was, a former HR executive across global organizations. And that really, and it's somebody that I admired a great deal. And he was able to help me. And I found that, having a coach helped me connect at a much deeper level with my team and my colleagues. It helped me become a much more authentic leader. And part of that was just getting a lot of clarity around my own values.
Beautiful. I love that you sort of became a convert, and those are the best people, right? Because we'll carry that torch for a long time. Let me ask about your experience. I've actually got a couple of my own axes to grind in here, so I'll just own that. But first of all, in your experience, internal or external coach is more useful in an organization, or do you have an opinion?
My opinion is external.
Because?
I think that what happens is, and I think internal coaches can be fine and do a nice job, but my value really is in the external perspective. There's some value clearly in having people understand the culture and the organization and that sort of thing. But I think in the environment that we find ourselves in, when things change so rapidly, if you have executives and people who've been with an organization for 10 or 15 years or so, having someone who has an outside perspective and isn't really kind of embedded within the organization can provide a little bit more clarity and a little bit more forward thinking, I guess, innovation kinds of things.
Beautiful. If you don't mind, we'll just keep going with this rapid fire approach.
Yeah.
Nice. One of the biggest values a coach can bring is to shine light on succession planning, or is that a futile effort?
That's a great question. So I think one of the best things that a good coach can do is help people kind of get in touch with their authentic selves and to bring that into the work environment. I think succession planning is critically important. I think of it a little bit more broadly. I think of it more from a talent development perspective and kind of a talent management, workforce planning sorts of things. And it's kind of like coaching, right? So you decide somewhat, what your needs are 5 years down the road, and you figure, well, this group of people can be successors for these sorts of roles, but you don't get married to it, right? So it's sort of like you have a perspective. So I throw out a perspective to you as your coach. I'm not really attached to it too much because things are, in the corporate world, clearly things are a lot more fluid. So I think the authenticity piece is what really carries the day.
Beautifully said. If you could sort of get all the leaders of all the organizations together and get their attention for a minute, what would you tell them? What's the number one issue you think people need to be slapped around the head and neck with these days?
I think so. From my perspective, and sort of as an HR executive, it's really about three things. One is making sure that you are methodical and thoughtful about your hiring process, right? So in my opinion, hiring processes should never be unstructured. There's not a lot of data to support that you end up with great results there. And they should be based on competencies. So what does the organization think is important to be successful at our organization or in our industry in general? So that's one piece. The other piece is develop your leaders and develop, so in my previous role, my task really was to develop a path of development for every staff member who wanted to avail themselves of that development.
Wow.
Not all staff want to be developed. Some people just want to show up every day, do a good job, and they're perfectly fine with that.
Put those people in data entry. Put them in there right now. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
gotcha.
and every organization sort of needs that. And then, being able to make the tough decisions. So the third leg, so hiring right, and not paying attention to time to hire and sort of meaningless statistics. Hiring the right people and hiring the very best people that you can find. Developing the people that you have, and then helping the people who can't be developed or don't fit in with the organization, helping them find their what's next, whatever that may be. So that really is sort of the formula that I would promulgate to this group of leaders that we would pull together.
And extra credit for using promulgate in a sentence. Beautiful. All right.
I've been waiting a long time to use that in a sentence, Chris.
You did not go to all those colleges for nothing, mister. All right, we've got about, I want to call it 3 minutes roughly, and if you don't mind, I'll take one and give you the other two. How about that?
Right.
The one that I like, and it's just for me, is I have this experience that different types of organization have different cultures, and you work in organizations that are large and governmental, right? You've been in Library of Congress and GAO. You're at Henry M. Jackson Foundation now. You've been at AARP and the Federal Election Commission. My sense is most of those organizations, and certainly the ones in the government, require a certain amount of covertness. In other words, there's always something on the wall, right? This is our plaque, this is our mission, this is our vision statement, whatever it is. And then there's what's really going on. And those are two different things. Is that your experience, or do you have a different view, or were you able to impact the culture in some way?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. So as I know that you're aware, I mean, every organization has a culture already. So it's sort of, the question is sort of putting your finger on it. I do think that in my experience across all of these different industries and different professions, that there does seem to be oftentimes a real disconnect between the outward-facing part of the organization, which is what you alluded to with the plaque, and the employee experience, right? And that creates, using coaching language, that creates a lot of dissonance, I think, for employees, because one of the things, so what will happen in that circumstance is an organization will say, we have these values, and I'll pick one, let's say collaboration. And what happens is, if we don't have within our organizations the means to help people become better collaborators or to offer that to employees, then that creates this dissonance or this disconnect. And if you're lucky, you have employees who recognize that, and they'll say things like, wow, my organization really says they believe in collaboration, but, there's no collaboration going on in my department. But typically what you'll have is sort of this disconnect. And that's what a lot of people in my industry talk about with employee engagement, and why that's so important. And data after data, research after research demonstrates the value and the power of an engaged workforce in terms of profitability, in terms of getting your message across, your net promoter scores, all of the things that your board of directors care about is really driven by an engaged employee population, and that really is a critical piece of that.
Man, I love your passion about it, but I've
I love it.
misspoken. You got about 45 seconds. How do we find you? How can we work with you? And then maybe just a thought to leave us with.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Well, again, thank you so much. So people can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm in the process of revising my personal website, so LinkedIn is a great place to start. And I'm also at Your HR Ideas on Twitter.
Great. So let's just say that again. So again, people, if you're looking for how to spell his name, it's John Sigmon. That's John Sigmon. You can reach him through LinkedIn. Just look him up, and or at Your HR Ideas on Twitter. Is that right?
That is correct.
All right, John, you got a few seconds to leave us with a thought for the day. What would you have us consider or take with us today?
When you are dealing with clients who are stuck in their careers, have them focus on their values.
Beautifully done. Well done, sir. Thank you so much. A man who clearly knows what he's doing, John Sigmon there. Check him out on LinkedIn. That's JOHNW, Sigmon, Sigmon. When we come back, we will have more of today's edition of the Coaching Show and talk with somebody who's a firebrand, a disruptor, right after these words. Stay with us.
Tired of presentations with no impact, no inspiration, and no traction? Do dull speakers have you and your team disengaged and distracted by smartphones? Christopher McAuliffe brings energy, insights, and 2 decades of experience, delivered with punch, humor, and heart. Your team will leave energized, uplifted, and with a sense of purpose. Visit ChristopherMcAuliffe.com to bring some heat to your next speaking engagement. McAuliffe. ChristopherMcAuliffe.com.
Are you seeking to change your career to something that is both fulfilling and challenging? Do you want to help people reach their full potential and strive to achieve their dreams? Would you like to inspire those around you and help create a better world? If you're serious about a career change or just want to explore the craft of personal coaching, contact Accomplishment Coaching. With locations across the country in Washington, D.C., Seattle, Chicago, New York City, and San Diego, Accomplishment Coaching is the leading institution in personal coaching. Our staff carefully monitors the entire program, live during the training process, and have met the strict standards of ICF International to achieve accreditation. Through a focus on quality instruction rather than endless modules of training, Accomplishment Coaching will guide you from your very first step all the way to becoming one of the finest coaches in the world. Visit AccomplishmentCoaching.com to learn more. Accomplishment Coaching, where coaches lead and leaders coach.
Christopher McAuliffe is your source for the latest in the world of personal coaching. Whether it be speaking with such luminaries as Deepak Chopra or getting the newest techniques and innovation, the Coaching Show is always on the cutting edge of what's happening now.
Gotham Books presents Marriage Rules by Harriet Lerner. The book Martha Beck calls required reading for anyone hoping to interact successfully with any other human, not just for those in romantic relationships. Get your copy wherever books and ebooks are sold, and visit harrietlerner.com to learn how to change your marriage today.
Do you want to be a professional coach? Are you in business trying to make a real difference with people you manage or work with? Have you started a coaching practice that isn't quite getting off the ground? Get the skills you need to be a successful coach today with the Coaches Training Program from Accomplishment Coaching. The Coaches Training Program will show you how to help others focus and be more fulfilled. Whether you want to improve your company's bottom line or create a thriving coaching practice, Accomplishment Coaching can give you the distinctions and practices you need to coach others effectively today. Accomplishment Coaching has spent 6 years developing a cutting-edge coaches training program that will have you ready to coach people professionally in just 12 months, and you don't have to take time off work to do it. To find out more about the Coaches Training Program, just call 1-888-548-6813. That's 1-888-548-6813.
Talk to me. WSRadio.com.
Accomplishment Coaching is proud
to present the following fine programming. Accomplishment Coaching, where coaches lead and leaders coach. AccomplishmentCoaching.com.
Welcome back to The Coaching Show with your host, Master Certified Coach Christopher McAuliffe.
Well, thank you, my dear listener, for being with us, especially since it's, at least right now, if you're listening live, the 3 of you that listen live out of the 50,000 that listen, it's right before Thanksgiving, and you probably got some stuff to do. So thanks very much for being with us. From time to time, I bring in people that just because they're cool, right? So we're going to meet one of those people in a moment, and we're going to find out if she's cool, because I met her through her website. Maybe she just got a very cool website. We don't know. We'll find out together. All right, but here's what I want you to know. This is important. You should listen up to this, because if you're like me, well, as we've said before, God help you. But if you are, then when you go out and look for something like coach training, you're looking for the world's finest. You're not looking for the knockoff. You're not looking for necessarily the most popular or the cheapest. You're looking for something that's going to actually provide the most value and stay with you the longest. Now, that's not everybody, but if you are one of those chosen few, one of those extraordinary few, then congratulations. And you need to know about Accomplishment Coaching. Accomplishment Coaching has been designed from the beginning to be the world's finest coach training program. And that's not hype. That's not an ad slogan. That is actually the intentional design of the program, which is one program. It's not a series of modules that you can opt into or opt out of. It's one complete program. It's a year long, and it pushes you out of the nest early. In other words, you go out and you start coaching immediately with tons of support, including the only program in the world, I believe, that gives you a coach each and every week of your life for the entire year. How about that? In addition to that, you get more hours of actual coaching human beings live. All the training is live and in person in small groups located all across North America. It's an amazing program. And here's the kicker. Stay with me. Are you listening? You can go and observe the coach training program in process for free before you sign anything. In other words, they want people to know about what good coach training looks like. And they invite you in. You can get an invitation and go and observe the coach training program while it's underway. You don't have to buy something that's a closed box or a black box, or you don't know what's in there. You don't have to sit through a long presentation about somebody trying to sell you something. In fact, it's just the program underway, and they invite people in certain times, certain days to come and observe. It's awesome. It's amazing. And if you haven't checked it out, I invite you to. Go to Accomplishment Coaching, AccomplishmentCoaching.com. Here are the cities it's available in. And if not, one of them is not near you, then it's a place you should visit. Ready? It's New York City, San Diego, California, where they have a fly-in program designed for people who live other places. Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. Victoria, British Columbia, beautiful little perfect island. Seattle, Washington, Chicago, Illinois. You got to be near one of those places, or first you should go visit. Again, it's Accomplishment Coaching. Check them out at AccomplishmentCoaching.com. You can also just talk to somebody over the phone about what makes that a great coach training program and the finest in the world. ICF accredited, of course. Check it out, AccomplishmentCoaching.com. All right. I promised you somebody cool, and let me find the bio to prove it. Steph Jagger is a truth teller and provocateur. Her coaching is a marination in love mixed with bold intuition, a dash of straight-talking authenticity, and a pinch or 3 of humor. You can find her on the web at Steph Jagger. That's STEPHJAGGER.com. Please welcome to our microphones, Steph Jagger. Hello.
Hello, good morning. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for being had. Where are you in the world today, Steph Jagger?
I am in on a small island called Bainbridge Island that is just off of downtown Seattle.
Super cool place to be.
Yeah.
Let's get this.
It is, yeah.
Let's get this out of the way right up front. I'm sure everybody has to ask you, are you in any way related to the leader of the world's most extraordinary rock and roll band?
I wish I was. You know, we always say we have traced it back that we are from the same very small town in England, but that's as far as it goes. We haven't done the genealogy, so I wish.
Do you ever try for backstage passes just on the strength of your name? Okay,
just on the strength of my name, yeah.
All right. Let's talk about Unbound first. This is a book that's not quite here yet, right?
No, it's here. Oh, it's here. Yeah, it came out in January of 2017. And the paperback comes out in January of 2018.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
I'm only 11 months behind. All right, tell us all about it and why we should care.
Well, Unbound it's a memoir that I wrote. I grew up in Vancouver, British Columbia, and had a good life, but it wasn't great, and I believe in great. And so I thought, why don't I quit everything and immerse myself in my own joy for a year in an effort to find great? And so I did that, and I traveled and I skied and I wrote as I went for the year. And I ended up breaking a world record and meeting the person that I'm now married to, and really more importantly, kind of started hurtling down a completely different path in life, and really kind of understanding myself on a whole different level. So it's a memoir about that whole experience.
And it's a lot of skiing in there. And I loved what you did there. I heard you say hurtling down as we were talking about skiing. It's was this before or after you read the book Wild?
This was before I read the book Wild. I read the book Wild just after I finished the trip, actually.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
You're
And
like, wait, me too.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of similarities. Cheryl Strayed and I come from very different backgrounds in life, but there are certainly a lot of similarities in regards to the physical adventure and the self-discovery.
Okay, let's just talk about it and get it ironed out as it was introduced in the recent Netflix Gilmore Girls series. Wild, book or movie?
Oh, which did I prefer? I prefer the book. I mean, Cheryl Strayed is just a stunning writer.
There we go. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Whew, glad we got through that. All right, and Unbound. Where do we find copies of Unbound? Where can I get my own?
You can find it anywhere. You can go onto Amazon. You can go into your local brick and mortar. You can go to Barnes and Noble. There's copies of it kind of flying all over the place.
Okay, good. So wherever fine books are sold. I think I've discovered why I thought that it wasn't out yet. It's because there's a place on your website that I had perused where it says advanced praise. So I was sort of assuming that it was not yet
sure.
My bad, people. Go get it. You can also get it at Steph's website, which I think we mentioned is STEPH for Steph and Jagger, JAGGER.com.
Yeah.
You're a woman who works with a lot of different types of people. What's when you start with a client, where do you start? Do you sort of, I mean, I know we're all supposed to because we're ICF accredited and certified and beloved. We need to go for the, what's your coaching request and what are your projects and like that. But is there a common place that you like to start when you're just meeting somebody, or do you just sort of, how do you get to really?
Well, when I'm first meeting people, I just am me, and I'm first meeting people. I'm not kind of going out there for a pitch. But once there's a commitment, once they decide that we want to move forward, we want to work together, I use a specific discovery form, kind of that they get sent in advance, and they fill out and they send that back to me. And that form has I really can't imagine starting off a coaching relationship without it. It has questions about their, upcoming goals in the next kind of 3 to 5 months. It has questions about their long-term goals, kind of 3 to 5 years. It has questions about their history, their peaks and valleys of life, and who's important in their life, and what they believe to be their personal, professional vision, et cetera. So I use that form, and then the first session is really a deep dive to get as much as possible on the same page with them about that. And very, very, I don't even want to say very often, every single time that we use that form, there's themes, there are patterns that really allow me to understand, what's happening underneath the surface of this person and what is it that they're really wanting, craving, moving towards in their life beyond just the kind of static goals that they've written in the beginning of the form.
Okay. Let's go a different direction. You, like most of us, have started with one-on-one coaching, right? That was your training. That's how you developed and started your business, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And now you've got this thing called, I got to get it right. It's like the Great Big Journey. What's it called?
It
A
is,
Great Big Journey.
Yeah, the Great Big Journey. You got it right. Bravo, A+.
And well, really, it's credit to you for coming up with something that's intuitive rather than a little bit off.
That's
All right. What is the Great Big Journey?
Yeah, so the Great Big Journey it's a 12-week program, and it's a mix of self-guided work. So every week for the 12 weeks, people get an email that includes a downloadable workbook and just journaling and a whole bunch of things that is really up to them to dive into and to explore and to use as they wish. And then there's one-on-one coaching that's built into the program to support that exploration. So there's a little bit that happens at the beginning, starts off with the same kind of deep dive that I always use. There's some sprinkled coaching throughout weeks 5, weeks 10, weeks 12. And there's additional things. There's a Facebook group. There's monthly webinars. There's, group coaching opportunities. So there's lots of stuff in there. And really, when I thought about my own journey and then also how coaching has impacted my journey, I think of Unbound, the book, as being an example and hopefully inspiration for living what I would call an unrestrained life. And I really felt as though the how-to, the individualized, kind of personalized how-to was missing, right? That's a self-help book. That's totally different than a memoir. And so that's the reason that I created The Great Big Journey, was to have something that really mirrored my own journey and what I'd seen from working with, hundreds and thousands of people over the last handful of years. So that's The Great Big Journey. And it's, again, as I said, 12-week program. We only take maybe about 20 or so people in an intake. So it's a small group. It can, the work is individualized, but there's opportunities to engage with one another. So it can get, a nice intimate group. So that's the gist of it. And then I still take a handful of one-on-one clients here and there because I adore that kind of work as well.
Okay, got it. Tell me about groups and coaching groups. Is that something you like doing, something you don't do, something you like when other people do?
I like coaching in groups. I've done a handful of different, workshop style things, that type of stuff. I adore it. I think there is something quite powerful in hearing other people's stories, in understanding a narrative or an experience that somebody else has had. I mean, every single time I've done group coaching or workshops in small groups, there's other people, someone will say something and there's other people in the group that are like, oh my gosh, I really thought I was the only person experiencing that. So I think coming together and creating a shared experience is a lot of what people are craving in this kind of world of individual siloed technology. And I think understanding a shared narrative, we're seeing that a lot in our culture in many, many different ways right now, I think is really important. So I think there's a lot of value to both types of work.
Okay, but what do you enjoy?
Well, I think I enjoy the group. I'm starting more and more to enjoy, I love the individual deep dive sessions that I do. But I really love the dynamic nature of the group. I think as a coach, it's probably more challenging for me at this point in my career to be working with multiple different dynamics in a room in one go. So I think I probably would lean towards that at this point.
Nice. And what I like about that is the subtext of we're always developing as coaches, right?
That's right. That's right.
And I can hear that that's your development. Like one-on-one is delightful and delicious, and after 5, 6, 7 years, you're ready to take on, okay, let's do this. Let's make even a broader impact.
That's right.
Do you have a message for new coaches just starting out?
New coaches just starting out. I mean, get ready. It's a wild ride. It's wonderful. My biggest advice is that your own life is your first and primary laboratory for all of this. And that exactly what you just said, like if we as coaches are not getting coaching, are not pushing for our own growth, are not taking risks, are not, I think that's probably the most important thing is, when you finish with your accreditation, which hopefully you have, you got to move forward down. I really am a big believer in moving forward down that path. Mm-hmm. And once you've got that, that's the beginning of the learning, and it does not end there. And I think we've got to be committed to continuing to march down that path of self-development and growth ourselves.
Beautiful. How important is it for you as a coach to have your own coach, or for other coaches to have their own coach, do you think?
Highly important. There's no way I would be where I am if I did not engage regularly with my own coach. And I will say coaches. I have a handful of different coaches that I use depending on what's going on in my life. One that is a really highly intuitive coach, a handful more that focus more on kind of logical logistics in business and are a little bit more kind of what I would call on the directive side. So I think it's massively important. And that's part of coaching is that it's very difficult for us to see all the different angles into a challenge or an opportunity in our own lives. And so we bring in a coach to help us do that. And I think that coaches are also humans and have their own challenges and opportunities. And it's helpful to have an outside perspective to kind of shed light on areas that we may have blind spots on.
For a limited time only, coaches are human.
Yeah, that's right.
Someday we'll go belly up to the coaching bot and just say,
right.
Here's the issue. What should I do? I love the notion of multiple coaches, and then also the notion of developing the coaches that we use. I tend to be a stayer, like I find my coach and I just stay with him forever because, why would I? And there's nothing really wrong. What's your guideline? Do you sort of change once a year, once a quarter, once a lifetime? How often are you changing, or how often do you recommend people?
Yeah, I have one coach that I've been working with for probably about 7 or 8 years. That I would call the kind of go-to. That's the coach that I mentioned. That's highly intuitive and
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, a little bigger, really big picture, and kind of dabbles into more of the spiritual realm. And I really adore working with her, and she will. I really hope that she will stay in my life for the rest of it. And then the rest is really kind of dependent on personal and professional needs. And I think everybody's got a different, what I would call lifespan with a coach. Sometimes that's a really long-term relationship. Sometimes it's okay, I really need kind of a kick in the butt in this area of my business or this area of my life for 6 months or so, and then I can move on down the road, maybe find somebody else when a different thing comes up. So I think that's really just depends on what's happening personally and professionally in somebody's life. But I do appreciate the value of at least working with one person really long term, because they know you, they know your patterns, they know the past, they know what mistakes that you've made in the past. They also know what you've dug into and the tools that you've used to kind of work around those things. And so they can help you draw on those things in a different way in the future. And I think that's an invaluable kind of part of coaching, is to have somebody who knows you long term.
Beautiful. Coaching, I heard you point a couple of times in the spiritual realm. For you, is coaching ultimately a spiritual endeavor, you think?
I think more and more it is becoming that way for me. More and more, my work initially started off in more of the executive realm. Not that people in the executive realm cannot be spiritual. That certainly can happen. But it seems to be moving more and more towards what I would call a solo entrepreneur or an entrepreneur freelancer kind of realm. And specifically, I do a lot of work now with women, and there seems to be a real craving for the balance of, tangible, real world, logical steps forward, as well as diving into mystery, calling, purpose, creativity, the muse, spirituality. So I feel like it's my special sauce to bring those two worlds together.
Beautifully said. What are you working on in your life? What's the year ahead bring you? Or what do you work, what's what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get behind the confidence and clarity that you bring and find out more about what are you struggling with?
Yeah,
what's
what am I
something
really
that, where's the dog poop that you didn't pick up?
Yeah,
like
where are the seams falling apart? Sure, yeah, this has been an extremely, it's been an amazing year and full of massive accomplishment, but it has been one of the most challenging years of my life. You put a book into the world that is a story of your own life, and it's like cilantro. Some people are going to love it and some people are not. And then the book tour, the energetic exhaustion of I've traveled to 50 different cities this year. So I think probably the biggest thing, and this is a theme for me, and this is something that I really have to kind of continuously go back to as a person, is I am very good at going into what my colleagues would call nitro mode, and I can go and I can push things across the finish line, and I can do them, as you said, with confidence, with but I exhaust myself. And so I think the next couple of months it's really going to be important for me to focus on slowing things down, because if I don't, things will start to fall apart. And so the next handful of months is really a slowdown. And I think for me, from a professional stance, I really need to work on slowing things down and doing some due diligence to gather, the best around me. And by the best, I mean my team of support, whether that's coaches that I bring on board to work with me on the Great Big Journey, whether that's, the accountant that I hire, whether that's, the graphic designer that I bring on, that I tend to, rush through those decisions and then get disappointed. And I think what's happening there is that ultimately there's an internal belief that I should be the one doing it on my own. So I bring people on, I rush things through, and then ultimately I end up disappointed, which is, of course, serving that belief that I'm the only one who can do it. So there's a lot. I mean, gosh, we could go on. We could go on about the work that I need to do personally. I mean, there's tons of it, and I think it's really, really highlighted by just the pace at which I've been moving this year, and for the release of the book and the launch of a lot of different programs in business. So it's a slowdown. It's time to go a little bit underground and plant some new seeds in a really slow, intentional way.
Nice. Any plans with the family this holiday? Anything you want to brag about or complain about?
Oh gosh, well, we've just moved up to Washington, and so we've got a few new places to explore, which is going to be wonderful. We're going to head off. My husband and I are going to head off to the Olympic Peninsula this weekend and do a little bit of exploration. And then because we're in Washington, we're much closer to my family in British Columbia, up in Canada, and so we'll get to spend a little bit more time with them this Christmas, which will be great. My mother has early onset Alzheimer's, and so that throws a whole other kind of coaching, therapeutic, grief processing knot into the loop of life. So that's it's become really important for me to be closer to family during these upcoming years.
Beautiful. And a great reminder for all of us, right, on this eve of Thanksgiving here in the United States, where there's so much to be thankful for. And thanks for taking care of your family. And we send you lots of love and gratitude. Do you want to take a moment here to send out something for several thousand coaches, probably about 50,000 coaches listening today? What would you have us leave with or think about, or what would your parting shot be?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. There are so many things to be grateful for. There is a lot of turmoil that's going on in the world today, and a lot of different camps and different beliefs, and I think I've seen it with my clients. There's a lot of strain that people are carrying, and as coaches, we're helping people with that. So my parting thoughts, I heard, I'm not going to remember exactly who I just recently heard this from, but they were talking about, it's always darkest before the dawn. It's always coldest just before the sun comes up. And so rather than focus on the darkness and the coldness, is it possible to focus on the preparation for the dawn? And to really help people focus on what is it that they're thankful for and grateful for and appreciative of, versus all of the different burdens that are kind of on our shoulders at the moment. So that would be my parting thoughts.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. That's Steph Jagger. Go get the book, Unbound, wherever fine books are available, or get ready and go on the Great Big Journey starting in January. You can find out about all of those and more by going to StephJagger.com. That's StephJagger.com. Steph Jagger, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you, my dear listener. For 15 years, we brought you people out on the cutting edge of coaching, doing something interesting or unusual or just plain wrong in the field, and you stuck with us. I thank you. I'm grateful for you. And on this Thanksgiving, I invite you to round up your friends and loved ones and family members and give them all the love that you've got for them. We'll be back, of course, next week with more of the people out there doing something extraordinary in the world of coaching. You're listening to The Coaching Show right here on WSRadio.com, the worldwide leader in Internet talk, and wherever fine podcasts are available. I thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Nowadays, internet devices are an integral part of your home. Everyone in your family has a smartphone, tablet, or a computer. Life is easier knowing that all your devices